People of YouTube, people of internet, outer space, etc. Today, it's Multiplier here to talk to you about entropy, a sound design principle that will allow you to better create clean sounds. Whether it's a bass, a lead, a sound effect, or anything at all, a drum. If you want to make a clean sound, or I suppose it applies to mixing too, if you want a clean sound, you need to be thinking about entropy. And what is this entropy thing you're talking about, Multiplier? Good question. The answer is, well, I suppose it kind of is. This Wikipedia page with a whole bunch of physics. Not really. Well, it kind of is. Entropy is a physics principle that effectively describes how the world or the universe over time gets more and more disordered. Think about the human body. As we age, we get more and more imperfect. There's more imperfections. Look at a young person and then an old person and look at the difference. Things get less perfect. They get less clean, less ordered. Same goes with a house. You build a house and it's brand new. It's a new house and it's all perfect. Everything's straight, paint's fresh, all the bricks are together and stuff. And over time, things just kind of start falling apart. So maybe the paint falls off, or the wood bends a bit, or a brick falls out the wall. You can always put the brick back in or repaint over the bit that's all ruined, but it's still not as perfect as it was in the beginning. You can paint over cracks and rebuild corners of a house. You can do all that. You can fix up a falling down house or just an aging house, but it will always be less perfect than it was when it was new. This is all because of entropy. Things get more and more disordered over time. Let me illustrate this with an example. A brilliant example that I thought of involving these, which are drop two, clothes pegs. You hang your clothes on the washing line. I can use these to illustrate entropy. Actually, right before I do that, let me talk to you about how all this entropy stuff applies to music production, and then I'll illustrate this with my brilliant example. So, entropy. Things get more and more disordered over time. And therefore, if you want to create a clean sound in music, whether it's a bass line or a lead or a sub bass, whatever it is, what you want to do is be very careful in creating it and then basically don't then do almost anything to it. Create it clean, create it in a small number of steps, and it's much more likely to be clean and perfect than if you say, throw it together willy-nilly and then try to fix it again. The more you do to something, the more likely it is to be disordered or messy, the opposite of clean. Therefore, when creating clean sounds, you want to create it clean and then be very, very careful not to ruin it. E.g. sub bass. Instead of taking a messy sub bass preset and then EQing it and doing mid-side EQ and compressing it and all that sort of stuff, instead, create it clean, create it perfect in the synth, get the envelopes perfect so you don't need to do compression, create it using a clean synth that doesn't create loads of artifacts, create that sub bass clean and perfectly, and then during the mixing process, be very, very careful not to do anything more to it. Don't mess it up. Don't accidentally route it through something that messes it up, chorus or whatever. Don't do that. Be very careful in creating something, create it clean, and then don't mess it up, because in general, the more you do to something, the more messy it's likely to be, which I can illustrate brilliantly using I keep dropping things, using these. So what I'm going to do, this is a brilliant multiplier, this classic multiplier coming up right now. What I'm going to do is try to create a tower using these on the keyboard, so added musical value there. I'm going to create a tower of these on the keyboard using two strategies, bearing in mind entropy. The first strategy will be to create it in a clean and precise and careful, well-defined way. So let me give that a go. So I'm going to stand behind the keyboard for this. That'll be fun. I haven't stood all the way back. Careful not to stand the way. I haven't stood back here ever in the video, I don't think so. I will. Can you still hear me? Hopefully you can. So let's build a tower, and I should probably get that You can see. You can see. Building a tower for the YouTube. Now the problem with these is they're not actually parallel. There's a bit of an angle to them, so this is actually quite difficult. So I have to be very careful. It's almost like I have a slightly imperfect plugin. So I've got to be even more careful with how I'm creating this tower. So I'm placing everything carefully here. I'm thinking about where I want to go, in this case upwards, and I want to create a tower. Now, I'm really bad at creating towers, so I'm really bad at doing this tower creation. But notice I'm being careful. Everything I put on the tower, everything I'm doing in creating some musical sound design, etc. Everything I do is careful, and I'm going to put these 2 hands. Everything is careful and precise. So as I'm making the tower, and I want it to be clean, whoa, very difficult. Now, if I had steadier hands, this might be easier. So it's like Jenga, but upside down. Everything I do is careful and defined. I'm carefully constructing this thing. Ooh, 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 ooh. Ah! Careful not to ruin it. Careful not to ruin it. I should have picked something easier to build with. Careful not to ruin it. And everything I'm placing here is, at least theoretically, perfect. Question is, how high can I go? That is the question. That is the question, YouTube. How high can I go in carefully constructing this tower? Oh, it's because they're not parallel. They're not parallel. Oh, this is a nightmare. This is an absolute nightmare. In my head, this went much more smoothly because I could just put them, book Jenga. So carefully making the tower, This is very stressful. YouTube shouldn't be this stressful. Careful. There's one on the floor, but we'll ignore that one. So carefully, always be careful. Create your clean sound with, even if you have to redo, so even the tower falling over, good illustrative concept actually. So even if you mess up a bit, just go backwards and make sure it's created clean. Don't, if the tower falls down, don't then try to rebuild around the fallen down bit. Clear it out again. Start from the beginning if you need to, and make your clean sound as clean as possible. But I'm got so excited by that one. I'm gonna have to put this one on as well. So. Got an odd number of closed pegs. That's okay. So creating the tower, perfect, as perfect as I can get it. So again, analogous to music production, you can't necessarily get a 100% clean sound or thing you're making, lead, bass, sound effect, or whatever. But you can make it as good as possible. And the way you make it as clean and as perfect as possible is by being really careful when you're creating it, and then be careful not to ruin it in one way or another. So now that took some time, I'll admit. So let's look at the other approach. Approach number 2. Am I in the way? Am I in the way? I can't get in the way. Not in the way anymore. Not in the... My tower building's not working as well this time. seems to be just sort of, I mean, I keep working towards what I want, a tower, but by just throwing it all together and then trying to fix it, it's not working as well. Mid-side EQ. I'm working towards, I've threw the sound together, got in the right ballpark, this side of the room, for example. I thought throwing it together, and now I'm trying to process it or manipulate it towards where I want it to go, tower. Not trying too hard, but always working, I keep compression, EQ, distortion, etc., processing. So I'm working towards a tower, but by just sort of throwing things at it and trying to take something imperfect and then doing more things to it, it just doesn't really work. There's no way to really take the careless, messy thing and then make it into something clean. It just doesn't really work very well. This, of course, is an analogy to illustrate the idea of entropy and how to create, I'll just leave one with this one, and how to create clean sounds. If you want to create a clean sound, again, it can be anything, sound effects, lead, bass, sub-bass, drums. If you want to create a clean sound, carefully construct it, then be very careful not to ruin it. As I say, the most obvious example being sub-bass. Instead of taking a bass preset that's got some sub in it and then trying to filter out the high frequencies and then sort of manipulate this messy sub-bass preset into a clean sub-bass, instead of doing that, create the sub-bass clean in the synthesizer, in the best synthesizer you can use. Get everything perfect, get the envelopes right, choose your harmonics or just distort it carefully, whatever it is you want to do with the sub-bass. Carefully create it, and then be very, very careful in the mixing and mastering process not to ruin it. And there you go. Entropy, a sound design principle brought to you by Multiplier. My name is Multiplier, and I will catch you guys on the flippity flip. It's a bit dramatic, wasn't it?